Hello, everyone. This is Ref Gordo. Very happy to be a guest today on the Three Count podcast with Mr. Red Dog himself. Very flattered and very honored to be here, and happy to just talk all things wrestling, refereeing, sport balls, domestic life, you name it.
Do you want to get live with me? Do you really want to ride with me? I'm in the club, baby, grind on me. Do you want to get live with me? Do you want to get live with me? Do you really want to ride with me?
Welcome everybody to another great edition of the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And by season 4, our 340 something episode, I would just hope you say with me, I am your Sherpa, because like your tribal chief, acknowledge me. But like every good Sherpa, you got to have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficient. You can. That's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring today? Well, you can find this person at Brew. You can find him at IAW. You can find him at SWA. You can find him at Voltage, HTW, Flying V, and Vibe, and so many more. He calls it like he sees it. He's fair, but he's firm. He also, like this podcast, always has the 3 count. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Ref Gordo.
Well, thanks for having me on board here. It's cool to finally be a part of this. Congratulations on having so many episodes and so many people here that you really got to scrape the bottom of the bucket and you have to bring referees like me on. So I'm happy to be of service.
Nah, man. We've known each other for a while, and it's been one of those things where it's like I laugh about it all the time because people will share that stupid meme, right? Where it's like, if you ever think you're worthless and remember that there's a referee in a wrestling match. I'm like, bro, you have no idea how hard that man's job is to do. Like, I ain't doing like eventually I'll do it, but I ain't doing it right now.
I'll tell you, a lot of people just think that they can just hand somebody a t-shirt with stripes on it and tell them to go count to 3. But the referee has probably, I clearly have bias, but the referee probably has one of the more important jobs of legitimizing the combat that is happening between 2 or 3 or 4, or whatever many competitors, because you have 2 people that have trained and built and created this character that they are and that they embody, and they are in the ring and they are telling a story. And you as a referee have to make sure that that story is being told, that the guy who's good or gal who's good or person who looks good is good, that the opponent is bad or not bad or just whatever it may be. And if I'm standing there and I'm not paying attention, or my shirt is untucked, I get about that, or I'm not wearing a belt, or I've got, tattered jeans instead of nice black pants, or my hair is a mess. Well, my hair is always a mess. Let's be fair. But just that idea of you are legitimizing the combat that is happening. You need to show that these things that are happening are real. We say loosely, but if that isn't being made, why would people care? Why would people pay attention? What is it that's going on here? We could talk all about what makes a good referee, and I'm sure a lot of people have talked about it. I'd love to talk about a little bit, if you don't mind me going on a tangent already.
Let's go.
What makes a bad referee? And this is the fun part. I'm not going to go deep. I'm not going to bury people. Nothing like that. But it's really funny, right? I'll talk to people that go to wrestling shows all over the place. And, they go, oh, I saw you working at blah, blah, blah. And I see you working at this and working at that. And they always ask me how I got into it, if I lost a bet or something. I was like, no, I love doing it. I love telling that story, like I said before. And they were always talk about, it's like, you got a really hard job. And I'm like, well, thank you. You flatter me. But real talk. And this is, I'll put you on the spot right here. When you're watching baseball, you're watching Major League Baseball. I know you're a sport ball fan, right? Name one umpire, just by name. Name one umpire.
Oh no, I ain't got one.
Okay. That's a good example. Most of the time when I ask them that question, usually one of 2 people will come up: Joe West and Angel Hernandez. The only reason people talk about people like Joe West and Angel Hernandez is because they've done something, quote unquote, wrong. They've called something wrong that's very clearly not the case, or they try to take over the game, where there's this image of, hey, people are here to see me. I'm the umpire and I call the shots. And Joe West had very much that attitude, that Cowboy Joe West kind of thing. That is not what you want in a referee, right?
Mhm.
I know that people are not spending their hard-earned money to go to a venue to see professional wrestling, and they go, "Sheesh, oh man, I can't wait to spend $25 to sit in the second row so that I can watch Ref Gordo count to three." No one's doing that, and that's cool. What they are watching is the two competitors battling, and they're waiting for a referee to count to three, or a referee to say, "Uh oh, we're close to 10. Somebody's got to stand up. Oh, we're close to 10. Somebody's got to get back in the ring. Ooh, that person's cheating a lot. This referee's about to count to five. They might disqualify them." But then again, the idea of being a good referee is you have to have some humility before you start doing it. If you want to be a referee because you want to be recognized and be on the poster and be a part of the event, and I mean, you are, but I mean, be a part of like the promotion of it all. It's fun when they do mention the referees and they promote, and it's very lovely, and I appreciate it. But that's not why you get into it. You get to work with some of the most talented human beings in the country and in the world. And I get to sit on my couch with my wife and my son, and I could say, hey, they just worked that match with me 2 weeks ago, and look at them, they're now on Dynamite, or they're now on Monday Night Raw, and that's cool for me to just say that I had a tiny little part in telling their story and having people believe it so much and follow it so much and build this credibility that they're now doing this on one of the grander stages that exist. It's pretty neat. Anyway, I've talked too much. I'll stop there for a second.
No, 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 you're fine. I definitely like it. The one thing about like referees, like a lot of people forget, is that like they're the pivotal communicator, like through everything, right? Whether it comes to like obviously the obvious ones, right? Cheating, rule breaking, like counts, right? All that kind of stuff. But then people forget, like, if somebody like is on one side of the ring and they need to like communicate with someone real quick, like you're that person. Like you're always coming in, hey, you're doing okay? Yeah, tell them that we want to hit this move. Okay, cool. And then they walk over, hey, by the way, are you doing good? They want to hit this move. And then like it goes from there. Like it's one of those things where it's like I think people forget like they're that person, and they're also the person keeping eyes with like whoever it may be, like the commentators or like the ring announcer, to give them the cues, like, hey man, like we gotta try and wrap this up. Like I
Mhm.
see it a lot, man. And it's crazy because like between you, Gina, Nick Shin, right? Who else I can think of like right off the top of my head that I see all the time just doing ref jobs. Well, before he passed away, rest in peace, SPO.
Mhm.
But all those guys, like you guys have SPO. That's not right. Yeah, it is. But yeah, like it's but like I see all you guys working really, really hard in the ring, like just and you gotta remember like all the finishes, right? And you're like, okay, well, I got this match and that match, I gotta remember these things. And it's really it's a tough job. And I was like, bro, I can barely remember my match, let alone what's going on everybody else. I'm like, bro, you need me to do what? Be where at this point? Okay, whatever.
There are times where you'll work a match where you've got a headset on, or work a show where you've got a headset on, and usually they're trying to get you to stick to times. Most times you see someone in a headset, if you're working an indie show, they're probably just telling them times. Other times it's everything else. Hey, get that heat in. Stay down for a while. The audience is trying to build back up interest in this match. Do the 10 count now. Or hey, they're going to need to put that receipt. Tell them they got to give that receipt right away. Um, okay, we so there's the timing cues. There's light cues in some shows. Spoiler. Depending on some venues, you may notice that there are certain lights that will go off at certain times. It's almost like if you've ever seen stand-up comedy, they've always got a light in the back. It's not as bad and or dramatic as that, but sometimes you just need to have that because you got to keep the story going.
Yeah,
Or a referee's gotta know for a second. All right, crowd's not into this. Take it home. Like, get him next time. Good luck. But another thing, and I would like to really shout out my trainers, Mike Martin and Joe Grasso, the Grimy Scots, also of Renaissance Rumble, because Mike and Joe put it pretty well. No matter who you are, if you're in a wrestling ring, and even if not, and you're a part of wrestling, we are in the protection business. If there is a moment where something didn't go right and someone is physically not well, it's not a I could still fight and I trust you. It's a look at me. Let's talk about this. Let's take a moment. Let's take some space. Because the last thing you want to see is someone go out there and gut it out and play hurt and this and that and try to power through. Then all of a sudden they've made an injury that might have been something they could recover in a week or two to an injury that's going to take them months to recover. And that's money in the bank, right? For a lot of
Yeah.
people. And you're trying to protect their careers, but head injuries, we see it all the time. Professional wrestlers, you know better than anybody else. You're falling down on your neck 30 plus times a night if you're
Yeah.
doing this, right? You are being paid not a lot to fall down a lot on surfaces that are not comfortable to fall down on. As a referee, you have to be sure that the people that are in this ring and telling this story are doing so at their best, and that's physically really an important thing, because there's so many stories of I wasn't sure, I didn't know. I mean, we've seen some things happen on live TV before where
Yeah.
you think you see something and you don't know, and it's again, we are in the protection business, and the most important thing is ensuring that everybody's doing things safely, and so that they can tell another story the next night or whenever next they're working.
Yeah, it was one of those things where like I had worked a match too, and Hamish will tell you about it. Like we were in a steel cage match, and I, it was weird, like the way everything worked out. Like I was supposed to take a suplex, but like I just kind of, I don't know what happened, whether my feet got dragged or I just didn't. The timing was off, which I think that's really what it was. I
Mhm.
got whipped back, and even though I was still tucking my neck, like I hit my back, of my head, and everything flashed out. And I looked at Hamish, and I remember just like staring at him. He looked at me. He's like, "Yo, you okay?" And I was just like, yeah, I'm not. I think we gotta stay right here." And so he's like, "All right, don't move." And he just kept like punching me, and then he told the
Yeah.
ref, he's like, "Hey, yo, just go to the finish, and like, and we're not doing the dive. Just take it home." And so like, it was crazy, but I knew it too. And that's the one thing too. Like as a wrestler, like you kind of have to be self aware. Like, "Hey, yo, man, like, hey, something just don't feel right. Like we need a. I can't do this." And but it was shout outs to Stewart, and then like it was also shout outs to like the ref also recognizing that I was just like, "Hey, I'm like, nah." Like, and so he was like, "All right, just take it home." So then we took it home. But it was one of those things that it's like the ref is very important, like in the aspect of his, because he's objective, right? Like not just like part of the story, yes, he's objective, but also like in just between two people, because like a wrestler could be like, "Yo, I'm great," and then just look glossy eyed, and you're like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
no, man, we gotta take this home." Like we done.
There's there's
Roll a
a
pin, let's go.
a big thing that you're kind of giving away here, and people know you because obviously your reputation precedes you, but you're showing your age.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that we do now, that 10, 15 years ago, we probably wouldn't approach the same way. I mean, the one thing that age has given me, because it's taken a lot away, and I think you'll agree, is understanding your own body and understanding your limitations. And people always, I walk into a locker room and people, and it's like my little bingo card. Every time I walk into a locker room for a show, I get mistaken for being a worker, which is the most flattering thing on the planet. They're like, "Oh, you're a referee? What?" I just thought I was like, "Sorry, maybe I'm too tall. I don't know." And then the other is being mistaken for how old I actually am,
Yeah.
my age. I'm knocking on the door of 40, and there are things in my 20s that you think about going out and partying and having a good time and being perfectly fine the next day, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But now it's the, oh, I might see a friend for a night out. I better make sure that I've taken hydrated enough and eaten a square meal, and make sure that if I have more than one beverage, to make sure that I'm also hydrating plenty, and understanding, oh, do I have the mechanisms in place to get myself home safely? Do I A
Yeah.
lot of that comes with maturity. And also, here we go, drum roll please, being a parent,
Yeah.
having a child who you all of a sudden aren't just responsible for yourself anymore. If you get hurt in a wrestling match and you, heaven forbid, you break a bone or you have a hand injury, and all of a sudden you can't pick up your kid in the morning, you can't do a diaper change like you usually do, or bath times struggle because you don't have function of one of your limbs. And but that idea of the decisions you make, don't just it's not just a simple, well, I'm living my own life now and it's fine, but it's a, there are people who depend on you. I guess
Yeah.
why that's why they call them dependents. But there's something about being a little bit older and working in this field, that it's kind of fun. I don't know about you, I like feeling like the team dad. I'll come
Yeah.
in and I'll bring snacks and I'll bring
Yeah.
juice boxes, right? Like I'm always the
Yeah.
guy. It's like, does anybody want mango? I always have dried mango. That's my jam. Shout out to Costco, because am I real dad if I don't go to Costco? Um, and there's just something about just contributing to the community in a way that you're building trust and you're building respect, but also like a, hey, look, this is the most fun you'll probably have getting paid.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and and some, and most wrestlers aren't here for the money. Spoiler alert, and I'm
Yep.
sure that it's talked about probably on every single podcast you do. Um, that people really do it for the love of the game, and in doing so, you also need to trust one another, right? Protection business, but you also should have some fun
Yeah.
and build some camaraderie in the locker room. It's like the old high school theater vibe. I was a theater kid in high school, and the way that everybody kind of rallied around, and like you're in the dressing room getting ready for the big show, and you're all getting each other like hyped up, and listening to whatever the Blue by Eiffel 65 was a biggie for us.
Yeah.
But like you're all getting hyped up and ready to go. But one other thing I will say, speaking of high school theater, people ask me what it's like to work with professional wrestlers. Are they these muscled up people that all of a sudden they just decided that they want to just compete in another place, or are they? And I say, look, the best way I can describe professional wrestling and a professional wrestling locker room is, number one of the most inclusive places that I will ever work with people. And I mean that. I play in a gay flag football league. I do a yoga class with a group of gay men, and I'm a welcome guest in their community. I'm very flattered by it. But the most welcoming, not to poo-poo theirs, because it's incredibly welcoming in those spaces, it's a professional wrestling locker room. Everybody from all walks of life. It doesn't matter how much money you make, what shoot job you have, what your preferred pronouns are, whatever it may be. You are accepted because we're all working together. But the other part of that coin, the other part that I wanted to get to is when people ask me, like, so what are professional wrestlers like? And I go, most of the time they are theater kids who found a gym.
That is the best way to like put it. And even like people who are like, well, I was never in theater. I'm like, bro, you were in something.
The other
Like
side of that, yeah.
you're an entertainer. Like you did something, right? Like I wasn't a theater kid. Like believe it or not, I was not a theater kid. But I will announce this. A lot of people don't know this, but I did show choir. Like so I was very much in the entertainment
You're a
side. Like I
performer.
definitely knew. Like I know big eyes, big faces, right? Crowd reacts to kind of those kind of things. And then like when I got out of the military and was like, yo, like I just want to find something to do. The first job I applied for was to be a writer for the WWE, and I hadn't written nothing, bro. Like I was just like, whatever, I'm gonna try. That's where I want to be is in the world of wrestling. So it was one of those things where it's like you're right. Like we come from all sorts of walks of life. Like it's just crazy to think like there's no one journey in pro wrestling. And I've done this show for 4 years now, and it's like seeing all the different people who come through the business and work, right? It's like you're a former military, or you're a theater kid, or you were in show choir, or you just wanted to get into pro wrestling because you loved it, or maybe I met a person this last weekend, and they did musical theater, like they very much, and I was like, yo, it's so crazy, just like seeing all the different people. But then what I do love about the wrestling business is you said it, you hit it right on the head. It is legitimately like the most inclusive place that you're gonna ever find in the world, right? And not all locker rooms are that way, but
No,
the
sure.
majority of them are that way. Like everybody knows everybody, and everybody has one goal, which is I think it's kind of like the military, right? And just like how you mentioned with theater, right? Everybody has like a single goal, right? They just want to perform to their best and to put on like the best show that you can. And in the military, like you're all working together to focus on one goal. And
Hmm.
that's what I love about pro wrestling is like we're all here together, and there's some people who they're always going to be the way that they are, right? And it's just like that in theater too, where it's like I just want to do best for me to showcase me, but the rest of the guys are like, hey yo, like we here for the show, like we here to help. We want the audience to be captivated, we want everything to be taken into full count, and no matter how big or small of a role that you play, we want you to play that role to the best of your ability.
I think you said it, and I'll do it. And me, I'm all about the pithy statement, but it's especially in professional wrestling. No one does this alone. you didn't all of a sudden wake up one day and you were Red Dog and you were, throwing forearms at people and, away you went. It takes people that you train with, that you train for, that you start to work alongside. We mentioned it before. You cannot tell a story by yourself in a wrestling ring, and it really does. It's no one does it alone. And your military background is a perfect example of that. All of a sudden, you are stripped of sort of your name and your identity and a lot of things until you're just a group of people trying to accomplish something together. And then, of course, you get to meet one another and hear their stories, and some layers come out, and you're able to kind of piece it together because you also need to be your best authentic self to do your
Yeah.
best work. And it's also very similar to what we were talking about inclusivity. If someone is afraid to be themselves, then they cannot truly perform and act and build things together. And I think to the other side of that coin of maybe they weren't a theater kid that found a gym. Maybe they were a varsity athlete who always wanted to be in the High School Musical but couldn't because it conflicted with
Right.
insert sport here. Whether they played volleyball or they played softball or they played football, and all of a sudden, when you're an adult, you get to make your own choices and your own decisions. It is an incredibly freeing experience, but it is also terrifying.
Yeah.
What if this doesn't work out? What if I don't know what to do? What if I put my opponent in danger? And that's the importance of finding a place to train that is comfortable and welcoming. And I think another thing that we sort of talked about but kind of danced around is there's a stigma about the professional wrestling locker room. There are a lot of stories that have come out over time. There are documentaries that are on TV now where there's a lot of controversy around them, and not just what you see on TV, but the things that have happened in order to make those things. And it's really just one of those moments of you have to you have to trust people, and that takes a lot. But you also need to surround yourself with people who are good. And
Yeah.
thankfully, where you and I have spent most of our professional wrestling careers, I cannot speak for further north. There are a lot of those people. There are some that are not, and they have since been removed or sort of, I don't want to say
Canceled.
exiled, but sort of excommunicated.
Yeah.
And people know what islands they've sort of been on, and others not. But I'm very grateful to work with people that have been open about that. And I think there's a great seminar that happened with Dropkick Depression. If I can give a shout out to Dropkick Depression, Tara Calloway has done some awesome work with them, but about having an inclusive and welcoming and open locker room, but also having, and the discussion was about, is there a retaliation policy? What if something happens between two people, especially if someone is in leadership or more people? What do you do, and how do you react to that and find that? And there are a lot of theaters that have led with that before they even book their talent and tell them to come. Flying V is a great organization, and that's a perfect example. They have a anti-retaliation policy, and some people may go, okay, this is a lot of emails for a wrestling promotion, and I'm not sure, but at the same time, the fact that these things exist makes me want to continue to work for them because I know they care that much about the people that they bring
Yeah.
in. Because again, you've worked a wrestling show. All the talent you see on a wrestling show are there for some reason, and it's a good reason. And that's why we're all together.
It's funny though, because you mentioned like, and I love Flying V, even though like I've never worked there yet. I love Flying V, but like it's one thing they do, and it's about a protection, right? And it's not just a protection of like protecting your opponent, but it's really just kind of like protecting each other and like understanding that we all come from different walks of life and that we all want to just like we said, we've been beating it like a dead horse, right? We all just want what's best for the show and best for each other so that we can all grow together, right? That's the bigger thing. It's one of those things where you mentioned it about the military and about growing, right? And like understanding like different layers of people. It's it's weird getting into like it's getting into a place where it's like, all right, I don't know this person, right? But I'm going to try to get to know that person to build this camaraderie, to build this teamwork. And the funny thing about it is most times when you go to different locker rooms, like it's the first time that you're meeting some of these people and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to build that connection quick. And like I was very grateful because like as a kid, I was a military brat. So I moved from place to place to place. And so the ability to just connect with people like instantly is something that I've just developed over time, right? But it's also one of those things I can understand like how scary it is to meet somebody new, right? Because you're like, I don't know if that person's a jerk. I don't know if that person's really cool. I don't know anything about this person. And who knows? Like, they could be really cool, or they could be a complete dick. Like, but you have to like roll that dice. And it is a terrifying experience. But I guess when I think about it, it's like it's weird because I've always taken a chance on myself and just kind of trusted my gut and just said, all right, well, I'm gonna try to talk to that person, and if we hit it off, we hit it off, and if we don't, we don't. Like, it's cool either way. And I think about like how you also mentioned about like taking a leap of faith on yourself, like to get into wrestling, right? Because it is, as being an adult, right? Like you said, right? It's one of those opportunities where that you get that you're like, oh man, I'm so happy that I get to make choices. Where am I gonna go now? What choice am I gonna make? And getting into pro wrestling, especially for me, like I was 34 years old, like getting ready to turn 35, and I was like, I may be too old to be doing this. Maybe I don't know. I don't understand why. I think I can do this. And that was my whole point, was I just needed to prove to myself that I could do something that I've been chasing after for a long time, and that I do belong in this kind of setting. And like it is funny too, because like when I was down in Maryland, like I was like, I was getting booked weekly, right? But it was like it was a learning process, and I didn't have that many bookings when I first got in, right? So back in like 2020, obviously COVID was a thing, but I had like 4 matches, and even after that, like the next week I had like, or the next year I had like 17 matches, and then after that I had like 40 something matches, right? It was just a building thing. And now, like you had mentioned it, right? Up in the Northeast, like I'm still rebuilding and I'm still learning. But the best part about the fact that I took this chance on myself to get into this business, to understand like more about people and learn, is that I learned a lot more about myself. And it's so much fun to be in a locker room and get to talk to people about the business and like understand their points of view and understand where they're coming from and how they got there, how they did this or how they did that. It's liberating to like, and then be able to host this podcast. It gives me this opportunity to just like understand more people and just learn more about myself and like how I can like avoid some of these pitfalls that happen in the business, but then also like figure out how I can contribute my part into the team to make the bigger show work out.
And I think that it's a really a testament to your strength, not just gym strength, because you know a thing or two about picking things up and putting them down in a gym. But it's about the fortitude that you show in doing it. Sure, your background is a perfect example of, hey, I've had to do this, and others really haven't had that opportunity until all of a sudden they are stuck with a, how do I market myself? And we can go all into how to market yourself, but I'm sure that that's been done time and time again. But
Oh, I love
it,
hitting the subject though. It doesn't really
it's
matter to
it's
me.
it's the idea of how you present yourself. It's so funny to me, and I think you've seen this. You know, I was on the shoot job hunt for 6 months. You know, not having a full time job, and thankfully, you know, I am employed now, and I'm very grateful for my employer. It's been a great time at Redacted. It's been fun at Redacted so far. Thank you for the first paycheck, Redacted. But there's something really funny about how, while I was kind of just floating and finding my next spot and in the shoot world, I would just hit up a promotion time to time, like over the, like, I wouldn't even think about the anxiety that comes with when you're applying for a job and you got to fill out a job application and you attach your resume, and guess what? You still got to put in your professional work experience, even though you attached your resume. I hate you, Workday. I hate you.
Workday, you
Um,
suck, bro.
um, but like that idea of, doing all these things. But I would just see a promotion, or usually it's one thing leads to another with networking, right? Where it's like, hi, promoter. I've been a fan of, I've seen your promotions, I've seen your shows. I'm very aware of this and this and this. I've worked with so and so, so and so, and so and so. Should you have a need for X job at any point, I'd be happy to work with your promotion, or if I can assist in some way. And sometimes I go, hey, you know what? We got plenty of, in my case, hey, we got plenty of referees, but I appreciate that. If we ever need somebody, I've got your information. Cool. Other times it's a, hey, you know what? We got a show coming up. I've got a spot for a referee. How would you feel about working with us? I'll pay you X. And I go, okay, cool. Other times, some promotions are like, look, let's talk. We've got a show coming up like in a week, and we'll just talk. But don't forget to bring your gear just in case. And like, that has happened. That's probably the phrase that's beaten to death the most, right?
Yes,
Always,
always.
always bring your gear. Case in point, one of my favorite wrestlers, And a delightful human being, Mr. Rob Radke, had that exact situation happen with him just the other day. Happened to check out a show not far from where he was. He was there, he had his gear, and he put on a banger of a match with a good pal of ours, Mr. TJ Sykes. And that's pretty cool. But you have to trust yourself, not necessarily have confidence, but in a way, just be sure of, hey, I got this thing. I'm licensed in these states. I've worked in these states. So and so, who's like a title holder in your company, I've worked matches with them. You can ask them if if you think that I'd be up to snuff or not. But that's the big thing, is like it takes one little key to open a door and then see what's in there. Because you've worked with tons of people that I'm sure do tons of stuff up north too, right? And it's just the building of finding a network and finding your way. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, when you're looking for a shoot job, you're throwing it into the abyss that is some application pool. With professional wrestling, the people that are organizing these promotions are usually pretty accessible, and you usually know who they are. They probably get tons of inquiries all the time. So it's a question of, how do you differentiate yourself, but also say, hey, here's how I would add value to your promotion.
Yeah.
So for anybody listening, that's kind of the key thing, is here's how I would add value, and then the no worries if not, and sort of leave it at that. I wish you well in the wars to come, and blah, 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 and all those other things. But a phrase I've been using a lot in my life, especially lately, is it's nice to be nice. It's nice to be nice.
And it's free. It's free, and it doesn't take anything. Actually, I think there was like a study that it takes more muscles to smile than it does to frown. No, it takes more muscles to
takes
frown
less.
than it does to smile.
Mhm.
But it's like one of those things where it's like, like it feels better just to
But
be
don't you like a
nice.
good workout?
Yeah. I mean,
Just kidding.
that's why I stay sad all the time. Just like
Yeah.
sad face. Need to work all those muscles so that I can individually rotate things. But one of the things that you hit on, I love it, and it's something that I'm gonna spill the tea on this one. So this
Yeah.
guy told me, and you're very familiar with the person that I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
So I was talking about a situation that happened at a promotion, right? And I'm not gonna talk about the promotion, right? But we'll just say I was talking about set promotion, and I was talking about how it got recommended to me to have somebody else speak on my behalf about it, right? And you had just mentioned that, right? So I mentioned that to Eel, right? Eel
Mhm.
O'Neill. And I was like, I just don't want to do it though. Like it just seems to me cheesy, right? And like just I gotta have this person vouch for me. Because I'm one of those people that I'm like always like I believe that my work will speak for itself
Mhm.
and I'll get there, right? But he said this thing and I'll never forget it, right? He goes, imagine, he's like, how many times do you go to Netflix and watch and read every single thing that Netflix says about a TV show? He's like, you probably don't. But how many times does your friend tell you to watch a show and then you watch the show because your friend recommended it? He's like, that's the same mentality you got to have in
Yep.
professional wrestling. And it broke my brain. And it was like, hey, this is such a good thing to think about. So like now it's like, all right. And I feel, and it's one of those things where you kind of it's not really swallowing your pride, but it is kind of swallowing your pride. But it's about going to those friends and saying, hey, uh, do you think you could put in a word for me with such and such, just to give me an opportunity to talk to them, right? Or do whatever it is. And it's so hard sometimes to ask that question or just
Yeah.
approach that situation. But it was funny because, like, for me, I'll lay it all on the line, right? I was talking to Carlson over at 1CW, right? Sean Carlson. And I had mentioned that I was moving, right? And the first thing that Sean Carlson did was put me in connection with Supernova Wrestling, right? And it's run by Adam Saint. And shout outs to him. Because of him, I went up to Maine. I wrestled on his show. I got over with the crowd, right? And he had asked other wrestlers about me, and they had all told him the same thing, like, "Oh yeah, you want to get this guy? He's fun, right?" Blah 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 blah. And so, because of that situation, he asked me to come join him at Focus Pro Wrestling, right? Which was just this past weekend. Shout outs to Focus Pro. You guys are going to
Hey.
see this in November, but
Yeah.
it is. But because of that, he also gave them my match, and then the promoter asked for more film from me because he wants to see what else I can do. And he was very excited of watching the film that I had done up in Maine. So now that's leading to another opportunity to work with another promotion, all because one of my friends who I was just talking about, and I was like, I don't really have as many networks as I would like, helped me get in touch with somebody who then wanted to do more research on me and found more stuff about me. So it it all comes down to, like, you got to remember too, like when you come to market yourself, like remember, if you have a friend that's in that promotion network, this is so important in this business to network everything.
Hey, let's give one clap for Sean Carlson, by the way. Um, he's a good egg. I really like the things that he's putting together, and the thing that I like about One CW, we haven't worked together. Stars haven't aligned, scheduling, blah blah blah. No bigs. Is they always had a hook to some nonprofit organization or some charity. Um, I particularly have done a lot of work with the Alzheimer's Association before, so seeing that they had a show for that, it just he does good work. Anyway,
Yeah.
I want to get that in. He's just good human. Also part of the dad crew. Can't hate. So yeah, the thing is just the power of networking and just the familiarity, right? Just having someone there. For those of you that may not know all wrestling terminology, we call this a rub. When a wrestler vouches for someone or says a good word about a talent of some kind, that's called a rub. And it is something that referees do a lot. It is something that wrestlers will do, to your point. But to what you were saying before, it takes some humility to take a step back and say, again, I think Elon Neal put it very well, using emotional intelligence. That's another one. If there's a lot of things about emotional intelligence out there, highly recommend. There's a good book. It's very short. I don't read well, so it was great for me. It's just taking a moment and understanding the perspective of the people that you're reaching out to, right? And I think you already said it before, how you'll put it. It's just having that person and that texture and saying, hey, I know this person. I know they work well. I know they do this thing. They think this person's good. This person's good. Same thing happened to me working that first brew show. I was already kind of kicking the tires on the folks that were at Brew, because I was like, oh, they got a show coming up in Richmond. Oh, that's a bit closer for me. I love Richmond. This would be so cool. I see that all these talents that I've worked with are on it. This is a great example. And I talked to people and said, hey, would you mind putting in a good word and seeing what's up? Before I could even reach out or find out about anything, the promoter for that show that was in Richmond reached out to me, said, hey, Gordo, you're licensed in Virginia, right? I said, yeah. Also, hi, nice to meet you. It's like, yeah, you came recommended from at this show, if I could say it. Erica Lee. Erica Lee said I should reach out to you, and I was like, wow, all right. Number one, like that's a solid endorsement. Erica Lee is a hell of a performer. She has been on broadcast television, on AEW, and everywhere else, and she's a joy to work with. And the fact that she thought highly of me and mentioned me to this promoter, and he basically was like, look, if she says it's good, I trust her 100%. And I said, awesome, I will do my best not to let all of you down. But that's just a great example of, once you start to build your reputation, sure, there are the moments of, hey, friend, do you mind? Or, hey, promoter, I work with this person that you've worked with. But sometimes it comes back and it'll sometimes do it for you. And I realize that I speak from a very lucky perspective of that. And it's very flattering, and it's humbling too, to sort of take a moment and be like, they like me. I guess I'm okay at this thing. And it's wrestling, unlike a lot of things in the professional world, you can, if you are seeking validation, you will find it. And if you work toward it, and you will see it, and you see it in crowd reactions, you see it in promoters that want to have you booked, you see it in the outreach that happens. But there is something incredibly fulfilling about the work that we get to do. And it gets me in my feels. Can you tell I'm on, if you know your Myers-Briggs, here's another one. I'm an ENFJ, which means I'm in my feelings a lot, and I'm not afraid to talk about my feelings. And, we can get all into that too, but
It's funny though, because like for me, like by the way, shout out to Erica Lee, friend of the show. We've had her on the podcast before. She's a delight. It's one of those things where like you make these genuine connections, and that's ultimately like what goes back into wrestling, right? Is that you're making genuine connections, whether with the wrestlers, preferably more with the crowd, right? Because that's where we want to get, right? But we want to make those genuine connections, whether you want the crowd to like you or hate you, it really doesn't matter, right? It's just that we want genuine connections with those people, and we want them to come back and see us, right? So it's all about understanding, like, one, you do have to be emotionally intelligent. Like, you have to kind of understand, like, who you are, where you are, and how you're going to play your strengths to other people's strengths to help, like, draw them into you. It's one of those things. Like, for me, it's always like I'm very big and animated, and obviously I come out with a big giant red suit so I look like Deadpool, or I come out with a big black suit and I have a vest on, and people are like, what's the vest all about? And then the first chop happens and the guy sells it, like, oh, my hand, and they're like, oh, it's a vest, it's protecting him. And then you hear me later go, it's a vest, stupid, it protects me. Like, but it's one of those things where you're making quips and stuff like that, but you want to pull people in and know how to connect with people quickly, because, again, it goes back to, we go to new places all the time and we have to make a genuine connection with the crowd somehow. And so, yeah, it is very much like the game of wrestling is one thing where it's like, oh, hey, we're here together as how do I want to put this? Like, we're all here, but we all just want to have like a great time, and we want to have people suspend their belief that, like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we know it's predetermined, right? We know this, right? Shoot, I'm sorry for those who didn't know that till just now, but it's one of those things too where it's like there's a beauty in it where, like, people just get attached, and they get attached to you, or you get attached to them, right? I love, like, seeing, like, little kids in the crowd and just, like, either getting them to boo me or cheer me. It's fun because they're so honest with how they are emotionally, and that's where, like, the best connections come into play.
There are two things that I kind of want to touch on. This is perfect fodder for this. I had a professor in college who he was a religion professor, and it was a cool. Like, I wish if I could do college over, I would totally been a theology major. It's just the most fascinating thing to me. But he had a very poignant thing to say, and it's just something that I've said time to time in relationships that I've had and other things I've said. It takes just as much emotional investment to say I love you to someone as it does to say I hate you.
Mm.
Right? Emotional investment. If you are getting emotional investment from the crowd, right? They, oh my gosh, I'm so behind this person, or oh, I want to just take this person and bring them by the neck, and I can't stand like that. But to the point of suspension of disbelief, and being in an environment where all of a sudden you forget about everything that happens outside in the outside world. I think about that in the circles that I've found myself throughout my life. Professional wrestling is a great example. There's a softball league I've been a part of for 16 years, I think, at this point, where during the week I'm so and so, and I work my desk job, and I this and that, and I live here, and da-da. But all of a sudden, I step onto that field, and it's just a bunch of people playing a game. Sometimes there's commentary for the big tournament. Sometimes you get walk up music, and you do your thing, and for a minute you're just a kid playing a game with a bunch of friends.
Yep.
And it's the same thing in the football league I'm in, by the way, this football league, every season there's a draft, right? So, like, you're thinking about, oh, what team am I going to get picked by, and where am I going to wind up, and what color is my jersey? And oh, it's the most fun, because there are years where you will be on a very successful team and have a great time, or not. And there are times where you'll be on teams that are not as successful, but you know what? You have the most fun during the games, even if you're not winning, or when you're hanging out and getting to know people. I love that. But with wrestling, It's the same thing. We all come from wherever it is, usually with a bag from Sheets in our hand, strutting into, the locker room and talking about, we drive X, driving whatever car and whatever. All of those things are left in the parking lot. When you are in that locker room, you're working with your friends who you trust, or making new friends that you build trust and relationships with. And you're not the guy who works desk job, whatever it is, during the week. All of a sudden you are Red Dog. You are Red Dog, and you are interacting with your crew, right? It's Duffin season in the locker room, and you've got to, that part. And then all of a sudden you go and you see that crowd. If you met these people walking down the street, maybe you say a little hello and whatever else it is in the real world. But when you're in that pit and you're working, a heel thing, there's a kid booing you, you go, oh, something inappropriate. That's not too inappropriate so that you don't get kicked out. But you're making enemies in there, but you can have a laugh about it. And 20 years ago, no, they're going to hate you forever. You need to exit from another part of the building, and that's that. But now, we put on a show, and then all of a sudden it's over. But for those 2 hours or whatever amount of time it is, the outside world doesn't matter. And that's what makes wrestling so cool. That's what makes the hobbies and things we choose. And I hope that others find the same fulfillment no matter what it is they do. If they're not wrestling, or if they don't play sports, or if now they're now the theater kid they've always wanted to be or have been, or they're into ice skating or dancing, all of a sudden you kind of, it's like your soul leaves your body for a second, and it's kind of taken into another world. And it's also why I recommend yoga,
Mm.
and I'll explain why. Because the one thing that's cool about yoga is it hits on all the things we've just talked about. The humility. There are going to be poses and stretches and things where you're going to be stumbling around and you don't know what's up, and it's like really, really tough. Um, you're also the moment of closing in the outside world. I have a yoga instructor I've been seeing for, my gosh, probably about 6 years now or so. And he's a lovely person. He's a friend of mine. Great guy. He'd make a great wrestler, by the way. He's bulking now, and he could. Oh man. Um, but it's not his thing. But so he's my yoga instructor, and he'll always say, "Hey, leave out the stress, the noise, the negativity. This is a time for your space and your needs, and to kind of, again, we talk about being older and understanding what our bodies can and cannot do. We can comfortably see where we can stretch ourselves and prepare ourselves for the week ahead. So this is my endorsement for, if you consider yourself older, or consider yourself a little bit less put together than you've been physically, yoga is a perfect opportunity to sort of take a moment to breathe and to stretch, maybe make some shapes, but to really sort of take a moment and figure out, take stock in your body. What parts of your body needs some attention this week? What do you need to sort of back off on? There's no one judging each other in this. There's no one that's, saying, oh, that you didn't get that right. An instructor is here to guide you, and every once in a while they will help you if they're not there. But again, the mental and physical combination of yoga once a week, that's my unsolicited dad advice for everyone out there. And I think there's something to be said for that, because it's also that mental health thing too. A good mental
Yeah.
health workout.
So there's like two parts I want to talk about, right? Really quick, and just kind of piggyback off what you were
Mhm.
just saying, right? One thing that I love about pro wrestling, especially pro wrestling, is that for those 3 hours that you're in that VFW, you're in that bar, you're wherever you
Why
are,
are
you're in that
ceilings so low?
stadium.
Why are the ceilings so low in some of these places?
Yo,
I
I don't know,
Sorry.
but But for that 3 hours, right, 3, 4 hours, like, you're somebody's superhero or you're somebody's enemy, and it is a gas either way. So you have to remember, like, hey, like, you have to leave just like in yoga, just like you said, right? You have to leave all whatever it is on the outside world that's bugging you, like, you gotta leave that alone and jump into this world, because somebody sees you not being the character that you're supposed to be portraying, it's no longer believable. So you have to kind of come in with like a clean slate and just remember, like, hey, yo, everything's good. And even if the day is bugging you, I love this because you and I we could talk about this all day. Go hit a pose, stretch, do whatever, get yourself in the zone, right? Because two people are gonna need you. Well, let me be real, three people are gonna need you, right? Your opponent's gonna need you because that's what you're there for, right? The promoter's going to need you because he's paying you, and the fans need you because that's who you're ultimately doing it for. So you got to remember, like, going with a clear head and clear mind, but also remember, like, hey, yo, this is your friends are right there with you, and they are ready to play or to, I know a lot of people be like, it's wrestling. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're there to wrestle, right? You're there to show that one person is better than the other. But at the end of the day, too, you got to remember, like, when you go home. But, you're still, it's not like you're going out there to, it's not like, I don't know how to put this. It's not like Ultimate Warrior. Well, he might have been. I don't know. Uh
We're not
it's
touching
not
him.
like Macho Man. It's not like Macho Man like was the Macho King when he left. Randy Savage didn't exist when he was like by himself. It was somebody completely different. But it's just funny to see some people that are like, yeah, I'm the same person in and out of the ring. Like, you are not that intense all the time. Like, it's okay. Just chill out. But just understand, like, you're there to have fun. And if you can't have fun in the business, then maybe it's time to move on. Because I don't want to be rude, but like that you got into this because somebody somebody, I don't care who it was. It could be Hulk Hogan, it could be Shawn Michaels, it could be John Cena, it could be Roman Reigns. I don't really care. Somebody that you loved watching got you into wrestling. And then you got into wrestling because you're like, that looks like fun. No one was like, man, that looks like I can make it to the WWE very easily. You grew a passion for love for it. So enjoy the journey that you're on. I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people forget, that it's not really so much about the finish, man. It's about the journey that you're on, and just be present in the moment, right? Because that's something that we talk about, especially in yoga, right? Just be present and just be there, right? And enjoy yourself, right? I know Bruce Lee talks about it in his book, Be Like Water, right? Shannon Lee reads it, and she says, like, yo, be present. If you ever watch the movie Enter the Dragon, be present, be in the moment. And that's so important in life. Like, remember, there's all sorts of things going on right now in this world and whatever, right? But the moment that you enter those four walls or you enter that ring, right? Hey, none of that exists.
It's true. To reiterate the point of, so as soon as you step on that baseball field, softball field, football field, wrestling locker room, you're no longer that person, and you are who you wish to portray. And to a point, this is another Mike Martin and Joe Grasso moment here of teaching, but you can be you as a wrestler. Oftentimes, it should be you dialed up to 11. That's the old, like, some part of you. It doesn't have to be all of you, right? Like, but there's a certain part of you, right? Like, for you, it's the little the mercenary thing, and the whole, like, I'm it's a vest, dummy. Like, this is I know what I'm doing. I'm a body, like, I'm I'm personal trainer,
Freaking
professional.
smart, bro.
It's like, I know what I'm doing. Like, that's you to 11. That's why Red Dog works. That's why Red Dog is effective. But I want to take a moment to shout out the wrestle spouses in the world, and the wrestle families, because at the end of the day, it's, by, in my case, by Mrs. Gordon, by Gordito, I'm going to go, drive an hour and a half to somewhere in Pennsylvania and watch some dudes fall on their heads, and women and non-binary folk fall on their heads 30 something times. And maybe I'll get kicked in the face once or twice. I don't know. But, like, the thing about it is that, the things that get me excited is when I'm going to wrestling, I get to referee, and you get excited. But when I get to go home, and I get to go home to the things that bring me joy as well at home. And, that's my spouse and my family and my son. But also the fact that, like, number one, I don't want to say allow, that sounds weird, but the fact that they are so encouraging. Hey, this is your thing. I know how much joy it brings you. Go do your thing. And the patience and understanding to do that. I really owe it to my family for that, especially my wife. But also the enthusiasm she has when I come home to us. How did it go? What was, and she knows, and then a lot of them are household names to us, quite literally. She's like, oh, what was it like? How'd the match with Eel go? Or how'd the match with Jordan Blade go? Or how did and just the thought and care of, they know how much, I'm sure you feel the same way. They know how much joy it brings us, and the fact that they continue to encourage it is really a testament to love, right? And I think that that's so cool, and that they understand. And there are moments where I'm like, hey, this is a lot, and there's some boundaries, but it also makes me encourage my wife to go, and please, if she's got some softball games or football games, or she's going to go see a show at the theater or whatever else. I don't want to say that we keep score. We don't. But I know that she's so encouraging of me doing these things that bring me joy that we don't necessarily get to share while they're happening. But the fact that I can reciprocate that, and we can all have our moments to go and be ourselves a little bit away from our families is really cool. And I think it takes a really supportive home unit to be not necessarily successful, but to be able to carry on this sort of idea and this sort of more than a hobby, right? So, just a big shout out to the wrestle families out there.
Yeah, it's no doubt. Like, without my family, like, I don't know what I'd be doing, and the support of them too. It's very important that you have the support, right? I know my wife understands, like, mentally for me, like, falling on a mat actually is, like, kind of alleviating, which is actually kind of self-deprecating in the same token. But it's like,
Wrestling makes no sense.
Yeah, wrestling makes no sense. Like, I throw myself on the ground. You would think that, like, I hit the ground like a 5-year-old, like whenever they don't get their way. But it's a lot of fun, like, and it's a lot of like freeing, and then mentally, it allows you to have that openness. But then in the same token, right, you want to be supportive as a spouse too, or even just as a significant other, right? You want to be a supportive. So if they go, hey, I want to go do such and such, you can't be like, nah, I don't want to do that. And then they go, well, you went to a wrestling show yesterday, so you should go to
Yeah.
this. I and okay, with very few instances, right? I rarely ever tell my wife, nah, I'm not feeling it. I if she's like, hey, now that I live in Massachusetts, right? Hey, there's this festival going on. Do you want to go? I do got to be back at a certain time, but like, yeah, let's go. And then boop, we're gone. Like, we're going to
Well,
set show because like I want to go. I want to see what she's interested in. I want to talk to her about that kind of stuff. And so I like, yeah, let's go out and explore. So it's very important that as much as they support you, you show the support right back too. And if they want to go do something, just go do it. Don't tell them no. Don't do that.
it's just I think just like when everything comes back to wrestling, right? Transparency is really important.
It's
You know,
super.
just in any relationship, if you're working a match where it's like, hey, I don't feel well, or hey, when people call it in the ring, right? I'm about to do this thing, you know. And there are days where it's like, hey, I've got a wrestling show coming up in 2 weeks, but I realize that you also have this thing that's been on the calendar for a long time. I'm okay saying no. I can tell the company they have got plenty of time in advance, and usually say, okay, I understand. I'm glad you asked first. Yeah, I think we should both go to this thing. Cool, no problem. Other times, say you should go. I know you've been wanting to work with them for a while, and we'll figure it out or whatever else. But yeah, not keeping score. Not it's you're in a real relationship, and it takes transparency and understanding, and just there are no secrets between my wife and I, as well as unsolicited dad advice. Again, here is when you have a very young child, you're supposed to tell them everything you're doing while they're doing it. That's how they learn words and how to like say things. So I don't hide a lot from my son. It's like, oh, where's Dada going? Well, Dada's going to go upstairs because he has to go to work, and so
Mhm.
and he'll show up. Every once later in the day, he'll come upstairs and he'll go, oh, Dada's working. And he'll like come. It's like, can I work? And like, because I've shown him before, I'm like, hey, here's what I do. I just type some things on the computer and move the mouse. And he's like, ooh, okay. And so like that's
Mm.
just
Yeah, yeah.
you need to you need that clarity and that transparency, because when things don't go well, you don't have to hide it. You could say, hey, look, I got kicked in the head and I'm not feeling well, and I'm probably going to make an appointment with the doctor. Not like I'm not be hiding it, not be anything. Like, thankfully, as a referee, those things don't really happen that often, unless you're just flukes or bad luck or whatever else. But just supportive households are really important. You're not making decisions for yourself anymore, I think, is the thing that we keep going back to, right? When you become a family person, there are other people that need you. And
Yeah.
so, but they also need you at your best self too. And that's
Sure.
why it's helpful to have that encouragement to go and do the things that put us at risk, right?
Right. It's important. Hey yo, so let's move this up, right? I don't want to cut these kind of conversations short because they work so well. But
Yeah.
we got to move this on to the best segment of the 3 Count podcast. But 3 Count podcast, dang. So this is the 3 Count podcast 10 count questions. And Mr. Gordo, Ref Gordo, this is how it works. I'm gonna fire off 10 questions at you, rapid, fast, and whatever your answer is, that's your answer.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put on the imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing.
Oh
And in the
boy.
words of my favorite commentator, Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
Ooh, Raw.
Favorite cartoon?
Freakazoid.
Oh, let's go.
Or
PlayStation or Xbox?
Animaniacs.
Either one wins both ways. PlayStation or Xbox?
PlayStation.
Favorite movie?
Blazing Saddles.
Let's go. Android or Apple?
Apple. Don't miss me with that green text message. I don't want to say a bad word, but oh,
Oh man, that sucks. Don't worry. Favorite actor?
ooh. I mean, I like Ryan Reynolds.
Let's go. Let's go. Full transparency, my whole character is an homage to
I
Ryan Reynolds.
I know. So last night the New York Jets were playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and of course they kept showing the booth where Taylor Swift was, because of course, like, that Taylor Swift is responsible for the NFL generating like 400 times more revenue in the past 2 weeks.
Right.
But in that same row is Ryan Reynolds, and I'm like, keep paying, like, boo, come on, I want to see Ryan Reynolds more. Like, can we see him? And
Yeah.
Hugh
And right
Jackman
next
was
to
right
Ryan
there
Reynolds
too.
is right next to Ryan Reynolds is Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Wolverine and Deadpool.
What about kayfabe? I thought kayfabe was a thing for actors. What's going on?
I know it's in a Webster dictionary now, so I guess it doesn't matter no more.
Gosh, sorry, I totally crashed the countdown. Not the
It's
countdown,
fine.
but right.
We could start. Thundercats or Voltron?
Ooh, Thundercats.
Yeah. Favorite podcast?
I would have to go with 3 Count.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we have this marketed, right? It's kind of all over the place. Just really
Yeah.
kind of down there in the lower corner.
Yeah,
Nominate one person that you want to see on this podcast.
ooh, well, sheesh. I feel like most of the people that I would recommend have already been on here. Eel O'Neill is always the first person I'm gonna throw out, and I'm sure he's already been on.
Had him on twice.
Yeah, I was gonna say get him on a third time. I would also say Common MK, who I'm sure has.
He has not actually. So full transparency, he has not been on a podcast yet. But
All right,
yeah.
Common MK for sure.
Cool. And then last but not least, my favorite question to ask every single person that comes on the show, and it's one that you kind of been dancing around of. Favorite curse word?
Oh, ooh, this is bad because I've been on a whole text thread about this word, and people hadn't heard it before. And now people have started using it. They're like, oh my God, I called someone this the other day, and it's the most awesome feeling ever. So, twat waffle.
I've heard that. I've never used it personally myself.
Oh man,
but it is definitely a good word to use towards people.
Yeah. And then for all the Orioles fans out there, I think I'd have to add fuckface in there just for Billy Ripken, right there.
But, well, listen, those are all my questions. I appreciate this great conversation, but the thing I need from you is to let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
All right. Well, number one, honor and privilege to be a part of this. Thank you for adding to the legacy that is the 3 Count podcast. I appreciate it very much. Again, hello, everyone. My name is Ref Gordo, also known as Andrew Gordon, but Ref Gordo is where you can find me. That's at Ref Gordo. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter or X or whatever it may be called by the time this podcast airs. Also on Threads, also on Blue Sky. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Team Gordo. And I think that is most of the places on the internet. You could stalk my Spotify if you want. It's a real thrill. You could see all the music that I work out to. And surprisingly, it is mostly Eurovision songs and some other favorites in there. Here's my other fun fact. The newest addition to my running playlist, because it's been popping up in my head a lot lately, and I couldn't tell you why, is The Call by the Backstreet Boys.
Let's go.
Yep.
I don't know if you know this now, but Red Dog's favorite band of all time is the Backstreet Boys.
Wow. Well, don't go breaking my heart.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I'll quit playing games. All right. Well, he told you where you could find him. You know what that means. We gotta do the best part of a wrestling match. Take this home, because this is the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clever Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. But like I said, it's never about me. It's about who's entering. So who's entering the ring? You see him right there, Ref Gordo himself. So you guys know what to do. Tune into the next episode and be there, or you're legitimately following us on all of our social media platforms. You're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You're following us on Spotify. You're even listening to us to Amazon Music, because we're there too. You're leaving those 5-star frog splash reviews on Apple Podcasts, and then you're even listening to us on iHeartRadio, because for some reason we're there now too. You're doing all that stuff. You're telling your friends about us. You're leaving those comments. You're sharing this video out to your parents, because they need to find a good wrestling podcast too, because everybody was a wrestling fan at one time. And then you're telling your pets about us. You're telling your enemies about us, because hey, we love haters too. So you're doing all that stuff, buying our merch, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for that outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to. Kawaii. What's going on? It is Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And what we need from you guys is just kind of show us some support, right? We want you guys to go to our YouTube channel at the 3 Count Podcast, go on to our Twitch channel, 3 Count Pod, or even our Facebook page, 3 Count Podcast, and just give us a like, follow, subscribe, even give us a comment, right? Do all that cool stuff. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your enemies, right? Or you can even come talk to us and just chat us up, right? Find us on Twitter at 3Count_pod. Find us on IG and on TikTok at 3 Count Pod. Go ahead and leave us those comments. We want to hear from all of you guys. We want to keep putting on videos and stuff like that. We want to keep making this content better, so we want your guys' support. Also, if you guys want to, go support us at prowrestlingtees.com/the 3 Count Podcast, or even find us on foryourwear.com. Give us the support. Show us your guys' love, because we want to give it right back to y'all. So, in the meantime, between time, love y'all.